That was, without a doubt, one of the most tragic hoaxes in recent memory. We have another one now that the media is the perfect time to remind you about a man we first told you about last September. A man who had a very special connection to Martin Luther King Jr. His name is Vernon Johns. He died 24 years ago. For our story, we interviewed people who knew him, and we asked James Earl Jones to portray him. Vernon Johns was a farm boy who mastered German and Greek and Latin and Hebrew, and then talked his way into a white college. He was a poet, a prophet, and a preacher. And if you aren't familiar with his name or his words, you're certainly familiar with what they created, because Vernon Johns, who never stopped thinking of himself as a farmer, sowed the seeds for the biggest social movement of our time.
Well, first I have to tell you I see him as a father. I mean, that's my relationship. I'm his child. He called me Baby D, which was his way of saying baby dearest. I was never frightened when I was with my father. I was frightened for my father. Well, I used to be afraid all the time that he was gonna get killed or get hit or beat or whatever, because he was always doing things which were so out of the prescribed behavior for blacks. I thought white people might beat him or kill him. Those are things that I really haven't ever talked about. But I used to wonder whether or not he was gonna come home.
During his trial period of the church, he was very professional. He displayed that type of intelligence that would fit the congregation. The church was made up of doctors, lawyers, school teachers, and all professional type individuals. It's been styled as a silk stocking church, so to speak. We had a different Vernon Johns to start with, but after having been there for a period of time, the real Vernon Johns came up. And of course, we were stuck with him then.
When my grandfather, who was a slave, was hanged for cutting his master in two with a scythe, they asked him on the gallows if he had anything to say. And he said, yes. I'm just sorry I didn't do it 30 years earlier. And they dropped the trap door. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is my bloodline.
These were people who were largely accommodationists. They couldn't have their positions as faculty members at Alabama State College or in the public school system without the blessing of white people. They didn't want the boat rocked. And Johns was a boat rocker. I mean, Johns would swamp the boat. Johns was absolutely uncompromising with injustice, with racism. So when he got to Montgomery, here was this sleepy little Confederate town, Confederate in spirit.
You couldn't sit by a black, or you couldn't eat with a black, or you couldn't, have any close relations with them. They couldn't, because they were diseased, dirty, smelled bad, and it was based on actual personal insult.
Knowing how we were perceived of made me feel that something was wrong with me. I used to wonder why I couldn't swing on the swing in this little park, or why I couldn't go into the library. What was wrong with me?
But you get adjusted to not going there. You get adjusted to not doing this. And that carries you right on through life. There's a lot of places I don't go now where I could go. I don't want to go look like it.
We had become accustomed to segregation, and we lived with it. We knew our place, and to step out of a place could mean, if not death, a great deal of inconvenience and hurt.
Now and then there was a black who just would not fit the mold, who just would not succumb and surrender. And this has been true all along, and many whites sometimes...
I want a ham sandwich. And a soda pop. There's something inside of me that doesn't like to be pushed around, and it's starting to work. I want another soda pop. Get you black ass out of here. I did get some satisfaction because as I was leaving that fine establishment, I was able to grab my sandwich. You know, I pronounced the shortest blessing of my life over that sandwich. I said, God damn it.
He relished it. He relished that kind of conflict, not just with white people, not just in going into a restaurant and ordering a sandwich, but the conflict with his own people.
He had a severe indictment against black people generally, universally, that we were parasites on the American scene, that all we did was consume goods and did not produce anything.
For instance, it wasn't anything for Vernon Johns to bring stockings in the church to sell watermelons during the season.
Fish! Watermelon, corn, and beans! Dickon, can I sell you a fish?
Dr. Johns, don't you think fishmongering is an undignified undertaking for a minister of the gospel?
Dickon, do you think that carpentry was an undignified undertaking for the Savior?
Oh my God, he was a thorn in their side because he disturbed their sensibilities, their perceptions of themselves.
See, you are a pack of educated fools because you produce nothing. And if you produce nothing, you are just a consumer. And if you are just a consumer, you are a parasite. Now, I have a duty to provide you with the gospel. But I have a right to provide you with food. As far as I'm concerned, I will provide you with anything except whiskey and contraceptives. Besides, I get 40 calls for fish for every one I get for religion. Now, just to show you what can be done on a small piece of land, I grew this in the back of the parsonage. and I left the roots on to prove they are not store-bought.
Vernon Johns had in his personality a need to shock. And I think, apart from his sense of it needed to be done, frankly, I think he got a satisfaction out of shocking. I think he enjoyed that.
There was a family, a very prominent family in Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, that had a son that really never really amounted to anything. And the boy was killed. And Vernon Johns said that he wasn't a member of the church and he wasn't entitled to burial in the church, and he preached the eulogy at the funeral home. Well, the family insisted and called a meeting of the church, and the church voted to have the boy's funeral in the church. And Vernon Johns' eulogy was something to the effect that so-and-so lived a trifling and worthless life. He went around Montgomery, Alabama, daring somebody to cut his throat. Last Saturday night, somebody obliged him. He lived like a dog. He died like a dog. Undertaker claimed the body.
In the spring of 1949, a series of brutal murders of blacks by the police led Johns to prepare a sermon. It was a sermon that would threaten the uneasy calm that had existed between the races and would become one of the first shots fired in the revolution for black civil rights. Among the murders reported in that bloody spring of 1949, it was the second week of May in Montgomery. A white man sitting on his porch saw a black man running down the street. The white man went into his house and came back with a double-barrel shotgun. He shot the black man dead. The killer's explanation? If he was running, he must have done something. That was just one of the incidents that ignited the simmering rage of Vernon Johns.
And now back to Amos and Andy. Hiya there, Kingfish.
Oh, just let me alone, brother Andy. I'll be all right in just a minute. Oh. I've been awarded a Rhodes Scholarship.
Rhodes Scholarship? What is that?
Well, every year they pick some brilliant American student, Andy, to go to college in England. And this year they picked me. And it don't cost nothing, you see. The intuition is free.
Well, what you worried about then?
Well, I ain't got the money for...
As I recall, a black girl had been raped. I think it was by 6 white policemen. We took her in our car to Tuskegee, where there was a hospital at Tuskegee Institute. I knew something bad was going to happen. I didn't know what. He was so agitated. He was talking under his breath. He said, I'm going to change the subject of my sermon to, it's safe to murder Negroes. I knew that that was a volatile subject.
Just after he had finished putting it on the church bulletin board, which sat out front in the shadow of the Capitol, the Commonwealth attorney came down, and Johns didn't dress up much. He could be in bib overalls or a pair of slacks, whatever.
Hey, boy, come here. Make it light on yourself and get on over here before I have to cause you some problems. Who's the pastor of this church?
Can't you read? Vernon Johns. Reverend Vernon Johns.
Don't sass me, boy. You think this John actually means to preach this sermon?
Well, knowing the Reverend as I do, he will either preach it in heaven or he will preach it in hell.
Well, we'll see about that. You tell Vernon I said be at the police station at 3 o'clock. And don't make me have to come back after him.
I don't think Vernon Johns was an apostle of nonviolence. He was shrewd enough to realize that it might be a strategic weapon given the circumstance. But I think there was a streak of violence in Vernon Johns.
Why didn't I tell you to send the parson down here?
I am the minister of the church.
Well, why didn't you tell me who you were when I talked to you a while ago?
Am I obliged to identify myself to every chance stranger I might meet on the public thoroughfare?
It's all right. It's all right. I know who the Reverend is. I heard a lot about him.
Judge Jones, you'd mind telling me why you have asked me down here? What law I've broken?
What is the purpose of that sign?
That is my sermon subject. I put it up to attract attention. It appears I have succeeded.
What are we wasting time for? Either that nigger takes the sign down, I'm gonna take an axe and go down there and knock it down.
Now, if you can't keep quiet, I'm gonna have you wait outside. Why would anybody want to preach a sermon on a subject so inflammatory as murder between the races?
Well, Judge, the truth is always inflammatory. Everywhere I go in the South, the Negro is always forced to choose between his hide and his soul. He usually chooses his hide. And I'm going to tell him that his hide ain't worth it.
Well, we'd like to hear that sermon right now.
Well, I will if you will allow me to collect a little offering first.
You know, Dr. Johns, the police here would love to have me give the order to have that sign removed. But I'm going to go ahead and let you preach that sermon. After all, who's going to pay any attention? The whites of Montgomery pay more attention if I stopped you. You're dismissed.
There was a little telephone table in the hall. It was right by outside my parents' bedroom. And the phone rang, and I picked it up. And I heard this voice say, "We're going to lynch you, you niggers."
seated, please? Will the deacons open the side doors so that the policemen can hear?
I think people are a little afraid because they were so close to the Capitol. And Vernon Johns didn't give a rap about that. He was so forthright in his speech, so forthright in the type of things he said, until it frightened some people. They were just afraid. They didn't know what would happen to him nor to them.
I just want to remind you what the clearest and simplest of those 10 great commandments is. Thou shalt not kill. The Birmingham paper says that you have a better chance in 1948 of being murdered in Alabama than anywhere in the U.S. A lot of the people doing the killing are the police officers who should know the law as well as anybody. Take Officer R.S. Thrash. He killed Amos Starr for resisting arrest. Shot him in the back. So I guess he was resisting while running away. Right here in Montgomery, 2 police officers took a man, handcuffed him to a tree, and beat him. Didn't kill him, though. They got charged with assault. Just 2 weeks ago, another Montgomery policeman got it right. He shot and killed one Henry Lee for resisting arrest. The coroner ruled it justifiable homicide. All these cases were justifiable homicide. But you know, there is no justifiable homicide. God never spoke about justifiable homicide. He said, thou shalt not kill. He didn't say, thou shalt not kill unless you got an excuse. He didn't say, thou shalt not kill unless you are a police officer. And the most assuredly did not say, thou shalt not kill unless you're white. Last week, a white man was fined for shooting a rabbit out of season. But of course, it's safe to murder Negroes. A rabbit is better off than a Negro because in Alabama, niggers are always in season. All right, just remain calm. Pay no attention to what's going on outside. What would God have said if he looked down upon us last week here in Montgomery? A Negro man was stopped by a trooper for speeding and brutally beaten with a tire iron while other Negroes stood by and did nothing. What would God have said when he looked down and saw an enraged police officer take up a young colored boy and use his head as a battering ram when the boy's father said nothing, did nothing? I'll tell you why it's safe to murder Negroes. Because Negroes stand by, and that has happened. Do you know what occurred to me as I watched that cross burning in front of the church? When the Klan burns a cross, it's a message. The next step is lynching. And as I watched that cross, it occurred to me that what we call the crucifixion is just that, a lynching. Isn't it ironic? Everything we worship was made possible by lynching. Because at that ultimate moment of death, Jesus spoke the words that transformed a lynching into the crucifixion, that made Jesus the Redeemer, not the condemner. Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But you know what you do. And the white police officers who are free day after day to murder Negroes know what they do. And when you stand by and watch your brothers and sisters being lynched, It's as if you stood by while Christ was being crucified.
We don't need this, and we don't need you to come here talking to us like this.
Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! And that's you! Because you sit here Sunday morning and sing hymns. For you know that every Saturday night your brother's being shot down on the streets, and you do nothing. Is it fear? Are you afraid of trouble? Are you afraid of death? Are you afraid that if you speak too loudly, protest too strongly, you become one of those lynched? Well, you may well be. He that takes not his cross and follows me is not worthy of me. So there you have the question. Are you worthy of Jesus? Or are you only worthy of the state of Alabama?
Truth hurts. Truth hurts. And he didn't let up. He did it every Sunday, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. And it becomes almost unbearable.
Everybody was good and guilty as a result of Vernon Johns' preaching, because they knew that they in no way lived up to the claims of their faith.
In all fairness, I think that they wanted the society open. There's no question about that in my mind. But at the same time, they did not want to be felt put upon and excoriated and cut up in the way Vernon Johns had a genius for doing.
Well, we supported Dr. Johns and supported him in all his endeavors. However, not to the extent that we felt we'd put our heads on the chopping block.
4 years after John's arrival in Montgomery, the congregation at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church voted to accept his 5th resignation. To replace him, the deacons began a search for a less militant, more traditional preacher. One of John's brilliance, but one who would be easier to control. In the spring of 1954, Dexter turned over its prized pulpit to the 26-year-old Martin Luther King Jr. That same year, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down segregation in public schools in Brown versus Board of Education. And it was Johns' niece, Barbara, whose strike against conditions in a black high school led to that landmark decision. In December 1955, the blacks of Montgomery began a boycott of the segregated public buses. The civil rights movement had begun with Martin Luther King as its leader, and the congregation at Dexter would play a major role in the boycott.
Had it not been for Vernon Johns, it would have not have been a civil rights movement. You'd have to build that stage on which to stand to project the movement.
He made the issue and kept it alive. He kept the fire burning and made people think. See, it is not changing laws which emancipates the spirit of black people. It is the emancipation of their minds.
I think he was the principal forerunner of the whole civil rights movement, because there was nobody in black life whose whole career was focused in such a white heat fashion upon this one matter of the plight of blacks.
If he had courage, it kind of give you some courage too. So you were helped by his courage. It increased yours if you had any, and if you didn't have any, it'd give you a little.
Vernon Johns died in 1965 of a heart attack. He was 73. We wouldn't have been able to bring you his story tonight without the help of Taylor Branch. The first chapter of his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Parting the Waters, is devoted entirely to the life of Vernon Johns. We'll be back in a moment.
Selected black